And I'm sorry to do this right now for the witnesses, but I would like to move a motion that I verbally put on notice at our last meeting. I would like to move this motion that I read in the last meeting, that the committee undertake a study pursuant to Standing Order 1082 on the systematic discrimination and toxic workplace culture within Canada Border Services Agency, that the study include a minimum of 5 meetings, that the committee invite the Minister of Public Safety, the President of the Canada Border Services Agency, the President and additional representatives of the Customs and Immigration Union, former and current CBSA employees with lived experiences, experts in workplace culture and harassment, and any other witnesses the committee deems appropriate to appear before it, and that the committee report its findings and recommendations to the House. I believe that the clerk has been emailed this motion that I'm moving, and I believe he will send it out electronically to everyone. I would like to just sort of share why I'm at this stage where I feel like I need to move this motion, and it actually starts late summer. I have in my riding in Oshawa, I have very often a coffee and conversation. Come and talk to me. Tell me what your concerns are with the folks, my neighbors in Oshawa. And one woman addressed me briefly. Her name was Caroline, and she had some real deep concerns about her treatment as an officer at CBSA. And when she shared these concerns with me, she broke down. She got emotional, and she said, "I'm sorry to get emotional. I think when I get emotional, people think that, I'm crazy, She gets a reputation, and women get that sometimes, right? We were told we're crazy and the things we're saying don't make any sense, and, how this isn't really happening, and a little gaslighting sometimes happens to try to convince them that this stuff isn't really going on." And I said, let me review your file. Let me read what it's all about. And at the time, I assumed that my mode of action would simply be, maybe I can reach out to the Customs and Immigration Union president and just on behalf of my constituent and my neighbor share that I would like to see what's going on with her case, because it's at the 3rd level, and it's my understanding, and I said this in committee before, there are 450 just in the East GTA alone at the 3rd level, and it was my friend Caroline, now my friend as I've gotten to know her, it was her understanding that the union only had the capacity to review 4 at a time, a month. So at that rate with 450, you can see we're looking at 6 to 10 years before something is resolved. And what happened with Caroline was she felt she needed to leave the toxic place that she worked. She had to leave and work somewhere else, and she has left, but she still hasn't let it go. She still wants to be able to advocate not only for her case, but for many others that have now said, thank you for having the strength and the courage for coming forward. We now want to come forward and share what's going on with us. So I set up a meeting to meet with her, and you know how scheduling is. It happened closer to the beginning of October, but it was after, and in fact, it was right around the week that we had in our committee here, the Customs and Immigration Union President, Mark Weber. And Mark was here, and we asked a few questions regarding how the government saw its ability to get 1,000 new border agents, right, in a timely manner based on the promise that the Prime Minister made. And through discovery, I learned that the attrition is very, very high. And very briefly, Mr. Weber pointed out that the attrition is high because there is a toxic work culture. And he just touched on it briefly. But it stayed in the back of my mind because, if attrition is that high, getting 1,000 new border agents is going to be tough. It's going to make even the topics we're talking about today regarding auto theft and making sure our border agents have what they need to be able to screen, and all of these things tougher if we have attrition so high that we can't get this done. So Caroline came into my office around days after that I heard this testimony. And so I didn't really discuss it with her. I just listened to her story. And her story was quite heartbreaking. Multiple former CBSA employees came forward with serious allegations. With her specifically, she was diagnosed with breast cancer, and she had to take some time. She was diagnosed with breast cancer. And she was worried about what that would mean if she took time off and came back, and what that would mean for her position. I mean, we know in Canada in 2025, if you have to leave for illness, you should expect to come back to work and not be demoted or not be in a lesser position. We expect that that person should be able to come back and have the position that they were supposed to receive. Now, her experience was devastating, and then she essentially was removed from a specialty position. And then after she fought and beat cancer, she became pregnant. And I have learned throughout several instances now that pregnancy is something that is essentially discouraged in our federal agency at the CBSA. Parental leave is discouraged past 90 days for both the father and the mother, but specifically the mother. And we know why with the mom it's especially important, because sometimes there's healing that is needed. And that pregnancy, made things worse. There's something called the National Integrity Center of Expertise, which she reached out to. But the problem with this organization is that they are internal. It's an internal organization, and you've seen where organizations investigate themselves and close the case. Nope, nothing to see here. No wrongdoing. Nothing is happening here to change. Look at, we've hired all of these women at managerial positions. Clearly there's nothing wrong. This is all in your head. It had nothing to do with your pregnancy, nothing to do with the fact that you decided to start a family. And it is becoming worse and worse and worse. Another wonderful young woman wanted to start a family, and she did. She was a dog handler with CBSA. And for those of you who know this and love dog handlers and the dogs, that they become such close friends, they train them, they have so much that they take part in. And I just want to share with you something that she said and that she wrote. And I just want to make sure I find the right one here. I joined Canada Border Services Agency in December of 2014. When I graduated training, I was proud to put on my uniform. And I'll pause right there, because I think that is probably the single most amazing thing I've seen throughout this process. These women who I spoke to, and a couple of men, but mostly women, are very proud to wear the uniform. They love their jobs immensely. They, at the border, inland security. Caroline, who I mentioned, was inland security. Jordana was at the border with her dog as a dog handler, and they were devastated when they had to give it up because they became pregnant. How is that possible in this country? It's not okay in any way, shape, or form, but she had to give it up. I was proud to put on my uniform. I believed in service and integrity and in the importance of protecting Canadians. When I first joined, I had heard the stories about the environment at Pearson Airport. This is Toronto, for those of you listening who may not know. The stories that circulated quietly among women in law enforcement. Stories about women being passed over for specialized positions in favor of a man or after taking a maternity leave. About women being told they were too emotional for enforcement work or being excluded from participating in special projects. About male colleagues being fast-tracked for opportunities that women had to fight twice as hard for. About bullying and harassment complaints by women that were quietly disappeared. Not the women, the complaint, to be clear. I had hoped things had changed, that things had progressed. I wanted to believe that if I worked hard, did my job well, and kept my head down, I'd be judged on my merit and not on my gender. Though to my disappointment, I eventually started to witness and experience these things myself. The boys' club that I was hopeful was dismantled long before I started in 2014 was very much still alive, and the women that were in charge were installed to protect it. I was warned by other female officers that complaining would effectively blackball my career, and watched the agency silence women who did have the courage to speak out by labeling them as aggressive or crazy. I was told to develop a thick skin and go numb to survive. She was told this in her workplace at CBSA. Toe the company line. So I did, she says. In spite of the environment, she found a way to make the most of it. She says, I spent time on various enforcement teams and eventually was selected to be an agricultural dog handler. After 10 weeks of intensive training in Quebec at the training college, she graduated a dog handler, and it was more than a job to me, she says. It was a calling. I was incredibly passionate about it and dedicated to my work. I was proud to serve Canadians in this way, to work in partnership with my highly trained canine partner, and to be part of a unique and specialized program. I loved my work. It gave me purpose, pride, and identity. Faye and I were extremely successful and intercepted prohibited food.
Yes. Nos témoins qui ont peut-être.
Our witnesses have been very patient, and they possibly have other appointments. So I move that we liberate our witnesses during Ms. Kirkland's words. Of course, if the witnesses wish to leave, they can do so, and we have gone past the regular hour that was allocated for our witnesses. We, of course, would have loved to hear more, but thank you, Ms. Dandurand, for allowing me to quickly thank both witnesses, Mr. Kingston, Mr. McGinty, for having appeared before committee and to have helped us understand all of the information. Thank you very much.
And I will take this moment to thank our witnesses. We did get good testimony from you, and I'm sorry I did take up the last 10 minutes, but it was a very important motion I needed to make, and I appreciate your patience. Thank you. As I was saying, her dog and her were extremely successful partners, intercepted close to 700 prohibited food items in the nearly 3 years that she was a handler. She says, but when I became pregnant, that pride slowly turned into fear. Pregnancy made her afraid for her job. As we saw in our testimony in the last meeting from the Customs and Immigration Union president, he said this is not a single issue situation. This is a culture, and he wasn't afraid to say it was a culture because it was. There are too many examples of this happening for it to be an isolated incident. So she became pregnant, she says. I became pregnant. That pride slowly turned into fear. Due to an antiquated policy, I was told that if I was away from the field for more than 90 days of leave, my dog would be removed and I would lose my assignment. The rule was absolute. There was no accommodation, no compromise, and no exceptions. This was especially concerning because my husband was also a dog handler with the CBSA, so we both stood to lose our assignments over parental leave. We proposed to split our leave, each taking 6 months, so I could heal from my scheduled C-section, but this was met with the same rigid, callous resistance by CBSA management. The justification I was given was that a dog's operational skills deteriorate if inactive for longer than 90 days. But there are no scientific studies to support that. None. The agency admitted to me that none existed. And here's where it becomes even more difficult to understand, and the contradiction is glaring. The CBSA Canine Training College that created this policy also trains handlers and dogs for the Correctional Services of Canada, where handlers can be off for up to a year-long period with their canines and return to their position. Those partnerships and the work environment are maintained. It protects female corrections handlers and their protected leave. So why does the Canadian Border Services Agency, under the portfolio of public safety and the public safety minister, enforce a rule that punishes women for taking maternity leave? So we have a federal agency that punishes women for taking maternity leave. How, in Canada, a country with some of the most robust maternity leave provisions, does a policy like this exist with the federal government in 2025? Or ever, shall I add? I was told my canine was an expensive agency asset who must be reassigned and remain operational. I asked why a dog was given more consideration than my protected rights, my human rights as a woman. During my maternity leave, my dog was removed from me. Being stripped of my assignment at the end of my pregnancy when I was most vulnerable and focused on the well-being of my child left an indelible mark on my professional identity. It signaled to my colleagues and superiors that my commitment and competence was somehow diminished by motherhood. Those of the mothers in this room know that your commitment and competence increases with motherhood. Well, there's baby brain maybe for a little while, slight baby brain. The resulting damage to my reputation, she said, has been deeply painful. And I don't think I can express that enough. She lost her position because of pregnancy. She lost her dog because of pregnancy. I was made to feel as though I did not matter, and all my work invested for the CBSA was erased, replaced instead with the stigma of being unreliable and less dedicated. Why? Because I wanted to exercise my right to maternity leave. At a time when I needed compassion and understanding, I was met with exclusion, not inclusion. The worst part was when I questioned it, I was accused by women themselves in senior management positions as being aggressive. I was vilified. I was often dismissed and told that my last name was now a household name in Ottawa as being a troublemaker, that my career was over. How dare I challenge them? I ended up leaving my career with CBSA, a career that I loved, over the discrimination that I faced. When I emailed the president, Aaron O'Gorman, and 2 other executives expressing my concerns, I was met with silence. I did not even receive acknowledgement. I transferred to another department within the federal government where the treatment I received is unheard of. This doesn't exist elsewhere that I can see in the government to the extent it does at CBSA. My canine that needed to be reassigned so urgently, remember, so urgent, sat in a kennel during my leave and was never reassigned. 2 losses there. She was eventually retired, thankfully to me, after many months. But all of this was for nothing. Personally, the emotional impact has been devastating and continues to be. The timing of this action occurred during what should have been a period of bonding, recovery, and joy with my child, and transformed a profoundly human experience into one of humiliation, anxiety, and loss. I struggled and continue to struggle with immense guilt for subjecting my child to the stress of this while she was in my womb. This situation stole every ounce of excitement and joy from my pregnancy, and this is something I can never get back. I question, At times I question whether I was wrong to prioritize fighting to keep a position I loved instead of focusing on my baby. The harm from this cannot be measured solely in professional setbacks. It extends to my dignity, my identity as both a mother and a capable professional, and my trust in an employer who claims to value women in law enforcement. Being penalized for needing time to care for my newborn sent a chilling message, not only to me, but to every woman who dares to believe that motherhood and professional ambition can coexist. This isn't an operational issue. It is gender equality issue. It is systematic discrimination embedded in policy, and it needs to change. She says, I am not the only one impacted by this policy, and it is only the tip of the iceberg for the systematic discrimination issues that plague CBSA. 4 other people that she is aware of, including her spouse, have been harmed by this policy, and most recently, a female handler in Montreal was asked during her interview process if she planned on having children. It's disgusting and it's unacceptable. This young woman is asking for leadership. She's asking for that leadership from us. We are members of the Standing Committee for Public Safety and National Security, which oversees CBSA. We have oversight, accountability, and we need to fight for the reform within the CBSA to ensure that, she says, to ensure that no woman in the CBSA ever again faces this kind of fear and loss during one of the most vulnerable and meaningful times in her life. No woman should have to choose between her child and her career, and no department under your watch, she says, should be enforcing policies that make her choose. To me, as I asked a few more questions of these ladies, it became clear, and we saw that in the presidents of the Customs and Immigration president in our last meeting, that it is a systematic issue that we are dealing with. And it is my understanding from talking to several people that there are at least 50 women that they are aware of with similar stories, that they are aware of because they're speaking out. There are hundreds of young women currently working and officers at CBSA who are afraid to say something. They are afraid of reprisal. They are afraid they will lose their positions. And they love them. It is their life's work. It's something they strove for to work for CBSA. It is something they wanted all of their lives. And most of these women have grievances that have been years trying to be dealt with. They have been pushed out not only of their roles, but they've had to leave CBSA because it became so toxic for them there. The president of the union, in his testimony last week, which is why, I decided that it was time to put the notice on motion. I couldn't wait any longer. He mentioned one person who's kind of come forward in news articles. She's spoken out. She has for quite some time, but people are now paying attention. Danielle Getze is her name. And there's a timeline of some events for her. She was also a CBSA K-9 handler. So she has provided a factual chronology of events and evidence illustrating the coordinated efforts to remove her from her position, the subsequent cover-up, and the sustained misconduct that has persisted across multiple levels of CBSA management. Corruption and deceit within the agency continue to this day, with senior officials consistently withholding information, providing false statements, and obstructing fair process despite clear findings from multiple investigative bodies. It should be noted that when the union president gave his testimony, he did also say that there's an issue with there's too much middle and upper management, and that is creating a top-down issue as well, which exacerbates the concerns these women have. So in this timeline, there's a few things I want to share, but they should give a fuller picture of the relentless misconduct, retaliation, and mistreatment that Danielle has endured at the hands of CBSA. It's drawn from hundreds of pieces. The timeline that she gives us is drawn from hundreds of pieces of supporting evidence that substantiate every claim contained within it. It forms the foundation for the larger body of documentation. And of course, my goal would be that, one day will be this will pass and she'll be able to come here and share some of this as well. But the documentation has been, quite exact and quite damning. So here's a condensed timeline, only focusing on the unjust removal from K-9 that Danielle Getze experienced. Do appreciate that during certain times there were multiple significant workplace events that met the definition of workplace violence and bullying occurring at the same time as these events. Many managers were interviewed in one sitting and asked questions regarding the unjust removal of K-9, but also other significant events. The managers had to navigate these interviews, attempting to cover up their culpable actions, and often change their answers from investigation to investigation, depending on the nature and scope of that investigation. What is consistent is that the managers, especially, and I'm going to name them, Superintendent Duffy, Chief Charlton, Director Lindy, and Superintendent Wakita, and these are documents from Danielle herself, refused to tell the truth about their actions and knowledge of the said events. In October 2018, Director of Dog Service is notified that Danielle Getze is pregnant and removes her from evaluations without notifying her. This is done because Detector Dog Service, DDS, wants to remove her from the program in anticipation of her maternity leave, which is sex-based discrimination based on family status. Getze found out about the unjust removal and through her manager, Superintendent Wakita, confronts DDS about it and notifies DDS that she will not take a maternity leave longer than 90 days. So she's already making concessions to keep her position, which is already unacceptable. DDS, however, still refuses to put her back on evaluations. Getze suffers a medical emergency as a result of the stress and is hospitalized until she delivers her baby prematurely at 7 months. She then filed a grievance over the 90-day policy. So this is, just to be clear, 7 years ago. 7 years. Getze and her baby in December are released from the hospital and she then presents her grievance to the Regional Director General. In January of 2019, a grievance response is issued. An RDG, Regional Director General, changed the grievance from a policy grievance to a personal grievance. Getze is successful. RDG promises that Getze can evaluate in January 2019, comes off maternity leave to do so. She's told she'll be able to go back to evaluations and that she will not be removed from K9 and will be allowed to take her full 1-year maternity leave. That the DDS 90-day leave policy will be changed and she is to be protected from retaliation. RDG instructs director to protect Getze from retaliation. In December, she returns to CBSA, December of 2019, so the end of that same year. She returned to CBSA for maternity leave and immediately experiences an increased hostile workplace spearheaded by a manager who is a recent addition to the K9 program and a Customs and Immigration local executive. This intensifies the frequency of meetings, almost 20 she had with managers, about the hostile work environment, superintendents as well, chief superintendents, directors, about the hostile work environment and the bullying and harassment, but management then took no action. Video evaluations are mandated by DDS due to COVID, and in July of 2020, and Getze receives a whistleblower call from a trainer in DDS who states that the managers of DDS are failing her and Nova without merit. The whistleblower doesn't want to be named. By the way, I'm seeing that a lot. Many, many, many women have come forward and they do not want to be named. They're afraid, especially those that are still officers. They're deeply afraid. One woman called me from another province a couple of weeks ago, and I happened to be, in my local office, my community office in Oshawa. And when she called, one of my caseworkers, my receptionist, she said she came back. She put her on hold and came back to my office and said, "There's a woman calling. She says there's something going on with CBSA." And so my ears, of course, perk up because I'm thinking, okay, what's going on here? I guess the first time I asked a question about this in committee, word spread that someone finally said something about this, even though it's been a known issue for a long time. And she said, she seems afraid. She says, "I'm not even sure if I should call you. I don't know. Am I going to get in trouble? Am I allowed to talk to her?" So there was that much fear. So I took the phone call, and this woman was a, yes, I'm diverting. This is a rabbit trail. This woman was a administrator. She was a trainer. for CBSA. So we're not just talking frontline officers here. We're talking administrative trainers, inland officers. And she had had a medical condition where she needed a transplant. She had an organ transplant. And during that year, she was accommodated because her work, she administrates the training manuals and things like that. Her work could be done outside of the office. So she did this work for a year and everything was fine. And then she went back for a while, and then then she started to get very sick, and she started to get sick a lot. And her doctors, many doctors and specialists wrote many messages to CBSA, to her managers, to say, because her immune system is so weak because of the transplant, she needs an accommodation. And the simple accommodation that was requested was that she be in an office on her own with a closed door, or she could work at home, right? Just so she wasn't around too many people all at once, because her immune system was so bad from her transplant. And she was denied. She was told by people who were not doctors that no, the cubicle is fine. A cubicle will keep you safe. You're going to work there. And she is in the middle of trying to fight to be able to go back to work, but not be in a cubicle. And she's afraid that if she says something to anybody above and beyond her management or her union, that she's going to be treated like she's crazy, ostracized, and treated just like a crazy woman, complaining again about the CBSA, right? And the workplace harassment that she's had to undergo. We're talking about a woman who had a transplant. Okay, so we're not just talking about pregnancies here. And I do suspect that there are men who have health conditions who are also treated badly in the CBSA, which is why my motion didn't just specifically mention women. But I do also believe with my whole heart that women are disproportionately discriminated against in CBSA. And that should be disheartening to everyone sitting at this committee table. That should make you pause and wonder. It should make us want to act quickly, because there are women suffering as we speak in situations that are unacceptable. They would be unacceptable if they were, a local restaurant that a waitress worked at or a waiter worked. But for some reason, it's allowable and acceptable in a federal agency. So back to Danielle. So I'm getting calls like this all of the time. There are more and more stories beyond what I could ever share here. But if we don't take this seriously, nothing will change. And I think that we want this to change, all of us. And the only way we can do that is if we do it at our level. It is the women and the workers there have tried for years to change this culture. And nothing has changed. In July of 2020, video evaluations are mandated by the DDS, which, as a reminder, is the Detector Dog Service. Video evaluations mandated by Detector Dog Services due to COVID. GETSI receives a whistleblower call, which I mentioned. The whistleblower doesn't want to be named or get involved out of fear for their career, but knows GETSI's failure is a farce. Whistleblower states the DDS managers are retaliating for the grievance she made in December of 2018 over the 90-day policy. It's a 90-day policy for maternity leave. That alone should make us disgusted as we sit here. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. We could get rid of that 90-day policy, but are women who go on maternity leave still going to be ostracized, demoted, moved from specialty positions into far lesser positions when they've worked, I want to swear, darn hard right? They've worked their life for these roles, but the act of motherhood or illness is affecting them in such a horrific way. Getsy informed a director who already knew about it, by the way, but doesn't let on that he does. Attempts to get Getsy to name the whistleblower, of course, and she will not. She audio recorded that conversation, and after that, DDS and alerts them about Getsy's knowledge of the failure. So this director and DDS communicate how they need to find the whistleblower to, and I quote, deal with them. Not hear them, but to deal with them. In September of 2020, a chief and a superintendent offer Danielle a placement. Danielle Getsy, I'm going to use her first name. Offer Danielle a replacement canine partner as her dog was set to retire, and Danielle accepts, and the chief emails the entire management team of her acceptance. So it's this big to-do, right? Because they're afraid of her, I don't know, suggesting that they're doing things they shouldn't. So one of the directors is made aware of Getsy's replacement canine and gets very angry. Been saying to all BSOs for over a year how he hates Danielle Getsy, calls her a bitch repeatedly, and then he wants to, and I quote, take her down. If that is not an example of workplace harassment and bullying to the most extreme, I don't know what is. The director meets with the superintendent. A chief and director yells at them, threatens them, and tells them to remove Danielle from the canine program because she's just such a witch, with a capital B, I guess. The director specifically and repeatedly mentions that Danielle should not be allowed to drive the government canine vehicle nor have access to the government credit card, as her canine partner is uncertified. The director wrongfully accuses Danielle of committing fraud, and is told numerous times that Danielle is not committing fraud, yet this person continues his practice of threatening managers and shops the idea of fraud to every manager in the workplace. So we see what that is, right? He's going around the workplace, besmirching her name, and making it so no matter where she goes, she is not able to work in a safe environment. This director then brags to everyone about his actions, states that he got Danielle removed from canine, and states he will get a policy created to confirm it. In September, the end of September, now at that point, Superintendent Duffy tells Getsy to return her canine vehicle, government-issued credit card, and cleans out her canine office locker. Superintendent Duffy signals that Getsy is now removed from canine. This is clearly as a result of Lassie's interference. There's an organization, and I mentioned it briefly. It's called NICE, N-I-C-E, and I'm just going to refer back to it briefly here because it's important. So, there's three sort of main issues, and just for the sake of clarity, because I do want to go back to Danielle's story, but I feel like I need to add some clarity to the issues. So I would say the three main issues are as follows. There's, of course, systematic discrimination against pregnant employees and mothers. There's also manipulation and misuse of internal HR systems to justify that manipulation. And also the National Integrity Center of Expertise, NICE, which I've referred to before, internal investigative processes and breach of confidentiality in investigations, that it needs to be reviewed. So I've talked, I mean, it's been very clear, this systematic discrimination against pregnant employees and mothers, it has gone beyond what it ever should, and I can't understand, as a new parliamentarian, how it got here. So I've been a member of parliament since April 28th of this year. So what is that now? 7 months? I can't understand how years of this discrimination has gotten to where it is, where pregnant women feel like they have to choose between being a mother and their career. And the Customs and Immigration Union president stated here last Thursday that that is exactly the case. They have to choose. And if they become pregnant, they are highly at risk of their career being destroyed. And that is not okay. Multiple women removed from acting roles or specialty positions immediately upon pregnancy or maternity leave. Human rights protections are being ignored. Pregnancy continues to be treated as a disqualifying factor rather than a protected condition. Testimony last Thursday confirmed that. It is a disqualifying factor and not a protected condition. The practice has become normalized, with some managers even acknowledging it happens often, and that women should simply be grateful for the lesser placements rather than equitable treatment. Senior leaders knowingly allow this behavior to persist under the guise of business decisions. Women who report discrimination are labeled as aggressive or difficult, while those responsible for misconduct are promoted. Employees and even labor relations officers fear reprisal for speaking up, leading to a culture of silence. So they've been silenced. Then we have the manipulation and misuse of internal HR systems to justify discrimination. CBSA managers have falsified or misrepresented position numbers in HR databases, is the claim, to retroactively justify decisions to terminate acting roles. Senior officials knowingly provided false information during internal investigations, creating an administrative paper trail to protect management decisions. Despite multiple complaints, no senior CBSA leader has been held accountable, even when evidence of misconduct or deception exists. So, to clarify that, as these level 3 grievances go through the slow, agonizing process of being heard, the persons responsible for the harassment or the discrimination have then gone on to be promoted and moved and protected. We're seeing a pattern here, right? A pattern that is so disgusting and unacceptable. I'm happy to see other members here at this table because it's such an important issue. And it's an emotional one, and as a mother of 2, by all rights, if we behaved the way CBSA does, I should not be here now as a member of parliament representing my community, because a pregnancy obviously makes me unable to fulfill my role. Being a single mother clearly makes me unable to possibly be here as a member of parliament advocating for these women. That's exactly why I'm doing it. Because if their voice can't be heard, then I would like to be their voice. And I hope that everyone around this committee table continues and will start this challenge and continue to start this advocacy and continue to be their voice until something changes. And you know, people who've known me all my life know that if I find something unjust, I'm probably not gonna let it go. It's unjust. I'm not letting it go, and neither should any of you. Despite multiple complaints, again, I'll say no senior CBSA leader, none of them have been held accountable, even when evidence of misconduct or deception exists. Internal reporting obscures real outcomes by marking cases as resolved once they're closed administratively, but not substantively. Some review specifics, some ATIP review specifics. Internal emails reveal that officials who raised concerns about misconduct were ignored, while managers implicated in wrongdoing face no discipline. Recently obtained ATIP documents further confirm that CBSA's internal accountability mechanisms are compromised by dishonesty and internal contradiction. Falsified records. Labor Relations acknowledges in writing that the employee was never under the position number management cited as justification for ending her acting role. A claim repeated for 3 years to defend discriminatory actions. Also, there are false budget claims. The same report confirms there were no budgetary constraints. In the department, contradicting CBSA's longstanding excuse for terminating a pregnant employee's assignment. Also, there are ignored warnings. Labor Relations questioned management's inability to accommodate for only a few additional weeks and noticed that the external investigation failed to address serious concerns. Yet CBSA told the employee in writing that due diligence was complete and the case was closed. It's closed. There's nothing more to see here. Nothing more. These contradictions show CBSA knowingly misled both the employee and the investigators, reinforcing the need for external oversight and the independent verification of internal investigation outcomes. Then we come to NICE. Sounds good, sounds nice, but it's not that great. National Integrity Center of Expertise. Internal investigative processes and breach of confidentiality in investigations. Excuse me, I'm just going to grab some water. Thank you. Thank you. So NICE has been described as procedurally unfair, biased, and prioritizing case closure over truth. Right? Let's just, case closed. Again, nothing to see here. Reports are often factually incorrect, dismissive, or influenced by management pressure. NICE staff have privately admitted investigations are actually directed by superiors. ATIP records confirm that CBSA's National Integrity Center of Expertise, NICE, improperly shared a confidential harassment report with Labor Relations, the same group responsible for defending management in grievance proceedings. Labor Relations officials directed NICE's communications, approved responses, and even drafted decisions, effectively controlling both the investigation and the grievance outcomes. So they controlled the outcome. It gets better. This represents a serious conflict of interest and violates confidentiality standards, of course, under the workplace harassment and violence prevention regulations. There are several news articles which I suggest that this committee go ahead and take a look at. Global News, entitled Former CBSA Dog Handler Discrimination regarding parental leave. CBC reported on the dog handler's maternity harassment in 2 separate occasions. So CBSA claims to have revised the policy in the most recent article from June of 2025, but the revised policy is very similar to the old one. Case-by-case basis when maternity leave should be non-discretionary. You know, one thing Caroline said to me when she goes, a lot of these things, you know, they've talked about putting them in the collective agreement for bargaining for the unions. And she said, why should human rights be part of a collective agreement? We shouldn't have to have an agreement on whether or not people are simply treated correctly. So there are approximately, and I'll make these quick follow-up points, and then I'm sure others may want to spend time debating this as well, or may have some comments to say on this before we vote on this motion, because this must be studied. There are approximately 450 grievances in level 3 that doesn't include level 1 and level 2, and this is just GTA. I suspect we have that many and more in the border areas of British Columbia, perhaps Montreal, Halifax, and more. They've been told that they're only hearing 4 grievances per month at level 3, which would make it an approximate 8 to 10 year wait. Meanwhile, they're in their toxic environment trying to survive, or they just decide they're going to go. The union receives the grievance submission, then passes to labor relations at CBSA where it gets tied up. So the women that I've spoken to mostly have level 3 grievances still outstanding. They know at least 50 other women dealing with similar situations, 30 to 50. A lot of women can't come forward for fear of losing their job, as they still work for CBSA. So as I said, the ones coming forward are people who are women who have left, so they feel like, what do they have to lose now? They've already lost the job they love so much. The best they can do now is try to protect, you know, women and men in the future non-toxic environment that hopefully CBSA becomes. So they're afraid to come forward. Often women are told to take a lesser maternity leave. Labor Relations has shared their personal confidential information without consent as if it were gossip. So, I mean, I can't thank enough these beautiful, resilient, strong mothers, women who brought integrity and who brought their experience and their expertise to CBSA, who have been sidelined and shoved aside. You can see that it's become this. I'm going to jump ahead quickly in Danielle's story to see what outcomes we're looking at, where we are now. Yes, so in February of this year, NICE, remember that really nice unit? They closed the file, citing all regulations have been complied with, including joint meeting of the employer and the OHS committee with the institution of recommendations per the WPV final report. So Danielle discovers in June this year that the RDG email and statements in January regarding compliance with the regulations and meeting with OHS committee was a lie. There was no meeting, nor any presentation of the final report ever occurred. So when Danielle confronted the NICE unit, who attempted to explain the feelings of both themselves and the directors, they were unable to do so. NICE then was forced to reopen the file after Danielle made her 6th complaint to Canada Labour Program regarding the handling of the file. So I know I shared a ton of information, and I just truly felt like I needed to. When I've read these, when I've had these women sitting in front of me and they've told me these stories, I couldn't not be moved by them. And I really felt it necessary in moving this motion that we study the toxic work culture, that I share them. And I know I took a long time, but I will end it there and see if anyone else would like to add their comments. Thank you.
Merci, Madame la députée Kirkland.
Thank you, MP Kirkland. I have Ms. Dandurand and Mr. Lloyd. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to recognize inaudible to the interpreter. Yes, point of order.
Monsieur le Président, je pense que vous constaterez.
I saw Madame Dandurand first and saw you second, and then there might be Mr. MP Lawton and MP Caputo. So, Madame Dandurand.
Merci. Alors,
Ms. Dandurand, yes, I was saying that I want to recognize the intervention of MP Kirkland, my colleague. It was very emotional and sincere. The topic she raised is very important, and it really deserves all our undivided attention. Oh, yes, Mr. Caputo.
Consult
Monsieur le Président,
list. There is a list right beside you as to the order, as to who asked to speak first. There are far too many times that we as Conservatives are not allowed to speak. Please look at that list and tell us the order of that list. Please.
As I just said, I looked at the MPs and also looked at the list. I saw Madame Dandurand first, and then
Well,
saw
that's very
Mr. Lloyd, and then
convenient.
the list also includes you, Mr. Caputo, after
Mr.
MP,
Lloyd is first on the
MP
list.
Lawton. I'm sorry
Mr.
for
Lloyd
that.
was first on the list. He should have been acknowledged. He had his hand up first. This is not a matter of the chair picking and choosing who they think should go first. This is a matter of MPs stating, I want to speak. We follow an order. I look forward to hearing from Madame in due course, but we have to follow rules here. We don't get to adjourn meetings because we feel like it. We don't get to pick which MPs go first because we feel like it. Mr. Lloyd should have been recognized. He should be recognized now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Caputo. I already shared my thoughts on that. Madame Dandurand.
Point of order. I would like to challenge the chair's ruling on that point of order.
Thank you. So there is a challenge to my my allocation of the floor to Madame Dandurand. So I would like
First, please.
I would like to see who challenges, who is in favor of a ruling against my decision. Please, those who are in favor of that.
Recorded division.
First, I'll suspend for a moment. I want to check who among the Conservative MPs are the actual MPs able to vote. So there is a substitution rule which I need to check with the clerk. Designation of the 4 Conservative MPs as being the usual MPs. So the first 4 will vote and the others will not. So who is in favor of the motion that was moved that my ruling be reversed? So 4 MPs in favor of that. Who is against that? Good, thank you. So that means that we are now returning to MP Dandurand for your reaction to the motion being moved.
Monsieur le Président, je propose qu'on passe tout de suite à l'étude article par article du projet de loi.
Mr. Chair, I move that we go immediately to the clause by clause.
Move to the floor and requires an immediate vote. So I'll pause for a few seconds to make sure that we all understand what the motion says. The motion says that we would be moving to the clause by clause work as of now. So who is, so a recorded division. So let's start with those in favor of that dilatory the clerk will go through the recorded vote. So, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. Mr. Ramsey.
I vote for. Yeah.
Mr. Assassi.
Yes, I vote in favor.
Madame Dondurant.
Pour.
Mr. Fragiskatos.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Lloyd.
Against.
Mr. Caputo.
No.
Ms. Kirkland.
No.
Mr. Au.
Against.
And Madame de Bellefeuille.
Pour. Qu'on continue?
Pour procéder à
Oui,
l'article
article
par
par article, oui.
C'est 5 oui, 4 non.
So this motion is adopted, which means that we will be moving to the clause by work. However, we'll suspend for a few minutes so that we can attend to some of our physical needs, and we'll be back in a few moments.
I wasn't even going to speak long.